One of the most common seabirds that we have here on Whidbey Island is the Pigeon Guillemot. And this is a bird that is just charming and engaging and very fun to watch. They nest in colonies, so there's a lot of pair interaction. Pigeon guillemots are a little chunky seabird, and they're mainly black. They have white wing patches, and then they have bright fire engine red feet, and they have a red lining to their mouth. They're a very social bird. They come in the spring in large groups and spend a lot of time singing to each other and doing sort of do-si-dos on the water, diving underneath the water, coming up, and then they separate into their pairs. Again, they often come up on the beach or up on the rocks and sing to each other and move around and communicate. And then they choose their burrows and breed in that burrow. The Guillemot Breeding Bird Survey has been supported by the Marine Resources Committee for over 10 years through a grant that funds a research intern during the summertime. Our volunteers go out for 1 hour a week, and that's probably about enough for volunteers to do, but having an intern who can be out for 4 or 5 hours a day at selected colonies gives us the in-depth data that we need to really understand more about the species, about their breeding success, more about their habits through the day, rather than just one snapshot of an hour a day that the volunteers take.
So I'm a research intern for the Whidbey Audubon Society, and I'm studying the Pigeon Guillemot, which are these birds you see behind me. And they come on shore in the summer, and they nest in the burrows. And they don't actually create nests in these burrows, so they just kind of pick one and they lay their eggs in it. They don't bring any sticks or anything to make it homey, and I'm kind of tracking their population here. By every half hour I'll count and see how many there are, and I also track the deliveries to the nest, to the burrow nests, to their young. And along with that, I'm also tracking the disturbances. So either an eagle or someone walking on the beach or something will disturb the colony and they'll all fly off, and I'll see how long it takes for them to come back. When they do deliver to their chicks in their nest, they typically bring gunnels or sculpins. Those are the two most common, but we do also see some forage fish like sand lance and perch and some other various species as well.
Our volunteers are amazing. They love going out on the beaches and watching their birds. They get to know them quite well. It's a project that we established the protocol, kept our data as clean as we could, and we were recently published in a scientific journal. So even though it's a citizen science-based project, it has been recognized through the marine bird science community here in the Salish Sea as a model project. Even though the project started right here on Whidbey Island, it's now being replicated in 4 counties in the Puget Sound area, and also out onto the Straits of Fuca. So there's potential for more groups picking this up and stitching together the various colonies up and down Puget Sound to get a wider view of the activities of the guillemots here. The Guillemot project started in 2003, and we've learned that one of the main values of this is to collect data on a long-term basis. This bird has been identified as an indicator species of the health of Puget Sound. So we set out creating a citizen science project and have been monitoring the birds ever since. We have a core of about 60 or 70 volunteers who go out and sit on the beach for an hour each week and monitor the birds. We're looking for population counts and the number of burrows that are active, and we're also trying to determine the type of fish prey that's delivered to the chicks in the burrow.
About 10 years ago I came to Whidbey Island, and I've loved the natural world, and this place allows us to be exposed to it in lots of different ways. One of it is to be involved with birds. So through Whidbey Audubon Society I got involved in this Pigeon Guillemot research project, which is a long-term study of this very interesting indicator species, the Puget Sound. And I've been a beach monitor for 10 years, and recently I have been a part of the Guillemot Research Group kind of core team that helps to administer this program around Whidbey Island. We're at Lippet Lane here on the west side of Whidbey Island, and this colony has had a kind of a catastrophic event a few years ago. A large portion of this bluff slid, and so when the birds came back that following summer, looking for burrows that they may have used before, they had some difficulties. So the colony, what it did was it kind of separated. Some of the birds used the burrows that remained over here on this kind of northern side, and then the birds went looking for more burrows over here on the south side. There were about 50 birds in this colony, and we had this last summer, we had about 7 active burrows that we knew of. So there's a lot of birds here that were not breeding, which is not uncommon for this species of birds.
This colony we call Shore Meadows, and it's one of our largest colonies. There's maybe around 60 birds here, but that number 60 doesn't mean that we have 60 active breeding birds. The percentage that we usually come up with is about 30% of the birds are breeding. So in a case like this with 60 birds, we might have, at the most 10 active burrows. So that would be 20 birds, and that would be about a third of the birds breeding. But this has been a consistent spot here where the birds continue to breed. They love to go up at the very tip top of the bluff, tuck their burrows in underneath the vegetation up there at the top. In the Guillemot survey, we also record disturbances to the birds. So these will be activities that alarm the birds and they leave the shore and stop feeding their young. We have found that the main disturbance is the presence of bald eagles. It's probably one of their number one predators. We also monitor beach walkers who may interrupt the breeding and any other disturbances we mark. We're finding that there are colonies where the birds don't mind the eagles, don't mind the beach walkers, but there are also colonies where this would disturb their feeding for at least the hour where the volunteers are there. The bald eagles will, in fact, take out a guillemot. We even have a photo of one bald eagle carrying a guillemot off in its talons. But also just their presence on the beach, flying by, sitting up on a snag, they will alter the behavior of the birds and keep them from tending their young.
My name is Terry Hudkins. I'm a retired electrical engineer, and I'm very gratified to be part of the Pigeon Guillemot effort to accumulate data because of my education and my professional background. I've always been a science nerd of sorts. My wife and I have been assigned the Langley Marina to collect observations on feeding habits and nurturing behavior of these pigeon guillemots. So once a week we go down and we spend about an hour taking observations of visits to the burrow by nesting parents. Based on what I've been told by some of the other volunteers, our colony of birds is quite inured to the presence of people. This is a small marina, but there's a lot of kayakers and power boats coming in and out, and there's also a lot of people that walk the docks, which run quite near the nest, the burrow that the birds have there. This burrow is in a pier that's been, one of the cross beams has rotted out and formed a hollow that the birds have taken over, and they seem completely comfortable with people. I know that's not always the case. I've observed these same birds in other environments, and they just don't seem to be fazed by the presence of all the activities that occur in this in the town. It's actually for us quite simple because we live in downtown Langley, so we just walk on the 3 blocks down to the marina, stop at the coffee shop on the way, get a cup of Joe, and go sit and watch these birds, which is a lot of fun. Some of the other volunteers have it considerably more difficult. They're getting up at very early hours and hiking miles down beaches, but for my wife and I, it's a quite easy endeavor. Well, one of the things that I've observed at the Langley colony is that even though the birds are pretty immune to the behavior of people and dogs and kayaks and the coming and going of boats, is that the eagles will definitely send the birds into panicky behavior. They either dive or they seek cover underneath one of the docks where they're out of the sight of the eagles. They are aquatic birds, and it never occurred to me till I studied them closely how in the evolution of the species they've traded off so many aeronautic attributes for their ability to swim and dive and capture prey beneath the surface. They're wonderful swimmers, but rather ungainly in the air.
So their wings are short and stubby, so they're not great for flying, but they do dive underwater really well. They're made for swimming underwater. It's like they're flying underwater. Because they're torpedo shaped, they just can zoom right through the water really smoothly. They're pretty entertaining to watch when you're just watching them with the fish in their mouth, trying to get up high to one of the burrows that are high up on the bluff. So you'll watch them zoom around off the water and they go in circles and they're trying to gain some altitude and until finally they're about at the right height and you start to see them go towards the burrow, and every once in a while you watch them veer off, and I don't know for sure, but sometimes it seems like they can't quite aim for the burrow very well because they're not very good at flying. So they're fun to watch. Maybe they're being clever and actually like kind of staking out an eagle nearby or something like that, but it looks sometimes like they're just being clumsy. Pigeon guillemots are closely related to like puffins and murres. They're sort of like the penguins of the north, where they are great in the water but not so great flying around. They don't really like being on the land very much. We will see them on the beaches during the summer when they come to breed and everything, but you won't see them farther inland than the beach. They don't go past the bluff. They stay very close to the water.
My name is Govinda Rosling. I played many roles, starting out as an intern, finishing up my Bachelor's of Science degree at college, and then continued on as a contractor, doing more detailed research for a couple more years after that, and then volunteer for a few years, and now it's sort of morphed into somewhat of a paid position as a coordinator, now that we've expanded our study to these other areas of Puget Sound and the Salish Sea over in Clallam County and Sequim area. This year, Vashon Island, and a few years ago, Thurston County in the South Sound. You know, we're here on Whidbey Island, and you know, we were tracking all the populations of the guillemots here around the island, but wouldn't it be nice if we could really just look at this in more of a broader view of, you know, all the guillemots in this watershed of the Salish Sea. So we'd love to just stitch it up through Clallam County, Thurston County, maybe up in Skagit, BC would be lovely. And then that way we get a bigger and broader idea of what's happening with this larger population of pigeon guillemots. We consider pigeon guillemots a species that can echo the overall health of the Salish Sea. We know that if their numbers start to go down, there's a larger problem in the environment. The pigeon guillemot is very susceptible to changes that may happen in the water column, whether it be acidity or toxins. Exxon Valdez oil spill back in '89, that wiped out over 90% of the pigeon guillemot. You know, we see them as a visible organism, and we want to keep this, we have our data baseline, but we want to keep this ongoing study to know what normal is looking like. So we've got over 60 volunteers around circumnavigating Whidbey Island, so we know if there were a spill, and there has been in the past. Penn Cove had a derelict vessel in 2012 that caught fire and burned a lot of diesel and spilled. So when we can act rather quickly. So eyes on the beach and keeping tabs on what's happening in our environment. Well, I've spent a lot of time watching these birds. I've probably clocked in over 1,000 hours. They're very charismatic. They're very easy to fall in love with. I tattooed one on my shoulder. He's with me all the time. We want everyone out there to know what a pigeon guillemot is. And I talk to so many people and they have no idea. They've never seen it. These are very charismatic birds. They're not real pigeons. They're, in the auk family related to puffins. It's something special that we have on Whidbey Island. We're getting 1,000 birds every year after year after year. I would say this study has something to it. It's got definitely the science base to it. We've got our volunteers that we're utilizing out on the beach, rain or shine, year after year in the summer months, and many of them are quite committed.
I really feel that the natural world really shouts diversity at all of us, and the importance of diversity, and the beauty of diversity, whether you're looking at flowers or trees or insects or birds or fish or mammals. There is something so compelling that diversity gives us. You can't put words to it. And so the idea that we study these birds so that we can possibly learn how to maintain an environment where they will continue to be a part of the diversity is the reason I'm really involved in this project. That's what keeps me here.
The project has been recognized as a model citizen science project by the ornithological community, and we're very grateful for that recognition, and that we know now that citizen science can cover areas where the Fish and Wildlife or other more science-based organizations can't really do the work on the ground that we can do. I have a feeling that this project will go on as long as we have volunteers that are willing to go with it.